here to help you own your connection with spirit and your intuition. And we have special guest today, Thomas Trafford, who is an intuitive counselor and a medium. And he's also a gentleman that I'm working with to enhance my connection to spirit and my intuition. So I'm so excited to have him back here on season 3 today. So please introduce yourself and give us a little lowdown.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Heather. I'm so happy to be back. So I am an intuitive counselor and a medium. I'm based in Vancouver Island, in BC, but obviously I do a lot of things with a lot of clients nationally and internationally. And I run something called the Cedarwood Sanctuary, which is a passion project of mine. It was birthed through my connection with spirit and my intuition, and we're trying to connect people with themselves through their connection with spirit. So it's perfectly named episode, and that involves everything from life coaching to grief and anxiety counseling to mediumship readings, connecting with past loved ones and family members, and then also like you're doing the one-on-one coaching in terms of connecting with spirit and owning that potential and that power that all of us carry as we walk on the earth. So it's a fun ride.
It is a fun ride. And this is something really special because this is the element of ourselves, our spirit, our energy that we're not taught about. It's not the common knowledge. And for some of us who are more spiritual or hippies or, have a holistic study, however you want to look at it, intuition, connection to spirit is like, of course, law of attraction, of course, universal laws, of course, morphogenic field, of course. And for some people, everything I just said, you're like, what? And that's exactly what we're going to talk about with you today, to truly help you understand there's more than just our physical body. And I am not Heather. I am not my name. I am not my body. There's actually something deeper than that. We're going to dive into what that is today. And what is that morphogenic field? That's something bigger than us that we're connected to, and how to truly unpack ourselves and get rid of the rocks and pick up the rockets, like rebuild ourselves with the things that thrive with us and have us thrive in life, not the things that weigh us down. So Thomas, I'm so excited for all your tips and tricks today. So please take it away with your first tip.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. That was very well said. And I think I'm going to take that rocket thing and use it myself, the rocks for rockets. Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. Like you were saying, there's so many different modalities and belief structures, and they all sort of center around one thing. I like to sort of distill what I've learned down as basic as we can go. So it's perfect for the tips and tricks that are needed. For me, that connection that we all feel or that we all have is something that is first and foremost. If you're not a human being who believes that you're not actually Heather, or that there's something behind, you're not gonna go very far with your spiritual pursuits. And that said, I know that there's some triggering stuff around belief and the word faith and other things from how we are raised, different institutions and different dogmatic sort of beliefs that we're raised in. But I think it stands for us to say to our audience that we're speaking very much more in a universal energetic way. So first, I think, you do have to sort of believe that you are part of that there is a web, a net, a connection, a tether, a cord, whatever you want to call it, that connects you to something that is more than just your human body and more than just your human life. That there is some sort of spark, I guess, is like a really good word to use. That other words people use is soul. But that there's something a little bit magical, a little bit je ne sais quoi about our existence that I think for time immemorial, humans have tried to sort of wrap our heads around, right? So there are some unexplained things. There is like the cosmos that, humanity's been considering since ancient, before ancient Greece and Rome. And so that sort of connection, that sort of universality of it all is where I think people need to start. And if you're sort of listening to us here and you're examining your own self and belief structure and things like that, take some time there to really sit and see what's coming. I think maybe, like you're saying, it's not something that's very common knowledge. I don't think people spend the way I do, spend all their time every day thinking about, creation and existence and what it means and why we're here. Those are big questions. But again, let's pare it down to something smaller. So just believing that you are connected, you're connected to your family, you're connected to your friends. Think about all those times, speaking of intuition, think about all the times you have a thought about a friend and then your phone glows and it's a text message from that person. That's an intuitive moment. That's a connective moment. It's important, I think, here too, to throw in the word quantum as well. Like in terms of quantum mechanics, the quantum field is another way of talking about that from a very scientific filter. So the idea of one particle being able to change and then another particle somewhere very far away that has nothing to do with it also has that same reaction. So if you think about that on a larger scale, both physical and non-physical, think about you know, how connected we all have to be. We are all made of millions of particles. We are all made, everything we touch and interact with is like that. So once you start to sort of give yourself over to that feeling of being connected to people, places on earth that are very sentimental to you because of experiences you've had, relationships, animals, think about how we treat our pets, those connections, like what is that, right? What is love? What is that sort of feeling that draws you to someone? So that's where I think we need to start, is just believing that we are part of that soup. I also like to use that word, the soup of consciousness, the soup of creation, um, and the allness that is outside of ourselves. That is where we have to start. Otherwise, we're not going to get very far with our own sort of ability to hear the rest of that stuff we're connected to, right? We're going to feel very isolated. We're going to feel a little bit alone. And so finding that place where you connect in whatever way that you do, because we all connect differently, I think is just the most natural starting spot for each person, because it's going to look different for everyone. And from there, I mean, there's a lovely, then you start to get into the practices. There's a lovely book written by, I don't know if you've read it, I've mentioned it to you before, but written by Michael A. Singer, The Untethered Soul. He's so great, right? Okay, yeah. And there's now a sequel actually as well. So, or a second book, a follow-up, which I haven't read yet. But it taught me something that I think has been said by many people in different ways, but it's that idea of watching your thoughts. I think that sort of comes next, right? People who have dabbled with meditation or journaling even will do the same thing, where you're by the process of journaling, you're having to sort of see, understand, and put down your thoughts. As you sort of do that, you realize that there's like a part of you that is aware of the thought. I have to see and hold the thought to be able to write it down with my pen in my book, right? I have to, if you're meditating and they get into a place where you're thoughtless, but then suddenly it's like, what do I have to pay my phone bill next week? Where did that thought come from? I'm over here trying to have no thoughts. I don't understand how it's possible, right? So as you start to journey into your connection, once you understand that you have one with the cosmos, you realize like, oh no, it's not just me in here. There are layers to my consciousness. There are layers to myself. There are layers to my experience. Think about a knee-jerk reaction, I guess, for instance, right? Or when the doctor taps on your knee, that's so, you didn't think about that. It just happened, right? So there's things that are working inside your body, inside your consciousness, that are layered, that you don't have access to all of that. You're not running that ship consciously. There's unconscious things happening, right? Our nervous system, things like that. So when you start to realize that like there's someone behind the thoughts that you're observing, you can be the observer of the thought and the feeling. It blew my mind when I years ago when I got there, because I didn't understand how that was possible. Like, if I'm Thomas, how am I witnessing or like observing a thought that I don't feel like I just had? Like, where did that come from? So you start to sort of play with the unconscious and the conscious mind, and I would assume you would know a lot about the unconscious and the conscious mind as well.
Absolutely. And I want to bring it back to we are connected to something bigger than ourselves. So let's start there. Some people call it ether, the fifth element. prana,
Yep.
chi, ki, it's energy. Energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred. That is law. So hang on a second. Let me repeat that for you again. Energy is neither created, so everything that's here is omnipresent. It's neither created nor destroyed, so it doesn't go away. It's only transferred. So you have ice, which turns to water, which turns to steam. That is energy being transferred. And so if we understand that energy is neither destroyed or created, only transferred, then everything is connected to this field. So they used to call it the net, which I actually like, the net, or the quantum field, morphogenic field. And this energetic field we can't see, okay? And we're all connected to it right now on the ether net, right? On the internet goes through the ether energy in the air. So what's happening is I'm speaking and there's a video and sound, and it goes out of my computer and it gets changed into a different frequency so that it can travel in the ether over to Thomas on the other side of Canada instantly. It comes into his computer and it gets changed back to video and audio. And how does that happen? Through the ether. And this is our energy. This is our net that we're all connected to. And as Thomas was saying, if something happens to one atom, so they take an atom and they split it. They have one over here on one side of the world, take the one on the other side of the world, and they do something to the one. The exact same thing happens to that atom on the other side of the world because it's split. Energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred. And so what we do to others, we do to ourselves. And what we do to ourselves, we do to others. And when we can begin to understand that we are all connected to this morphogenic field, and there's so many cool different stories I could say about this, but the one I want to share the most is the story of a psychiatrist who was in a hospital and in a mental health institute trying to heal people when he realized if he just healed within himself, his clients would heal. That institution is no longer open. All clients were healed. So that's a true story. So why can't we do that with so many other things? This is the knowledge we don't understand. We're not taught. And then if we don't believe it, we actually override and we'll stay in the negative. So this is the energy field, the morphogenic field, the ether, the fifth element, ki, chi, prana. This is our net we're all connected to. This is what Thomas is talking about. And in our unconscious mind, so you have your conscious mind, which Thomas says, do you like bananas? I can say yes or no. I can do that, right? And then unconsciously, you have it's basically like a set of mental filters. It's a computer and operating system that created you, and all your knee-jerk reactions are because of that belief system, that mental filter. And so in our unconscious mind, it is our computer operating system that runs our life. 98% of what we do in a day is habitual. We actually do it automatically. Our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, all of it, 98% of it is automatic based off the unconscious programming. So that voice that you're observing, it can be your unconscious. It could also be your ego, which is trying to keep you safe. And it can also be your higher self. So the unconscious, that's like your personality. That's the person you've been conditioned to be. Then you have your ego that's always going to want to keep you safe. And then you have your higher self, that connection to your soul, to spirit, to source, to God, to creator.
To the net, to the field.
To the field, exactly. And so that is what we're going to help you do today, to connect to the field, to the net, to the quantum, so that you can truly begin to own it. And I'm going to explain in a really simple stat of how this is so important for you. So we have 100% of the cosmos, the universe that we operate in. And what we actually operate in is 4%. So in this universe, we are operating in 4% of it. In that 4%, only 0.4 is the physical world. 3.6 is quantum mechanics, energy, the ether, the net. It is saying, I want something, but not believing it, so you don't get it. It's saying what you don't want instead of saying what you do want, which puts that out into the field. And then you get what you didn't want and you wonder why. That's because of this connection to the net, to the field. And Thomas is going to give you some great tips to step out of being a physical doer. We are human beings.
And if you think about it in terms of being part of that net that has decided to narrow all of that energy so succinctly down that you are a physical being, right? If you think about it that way, right? So like the net is the mass consciousness. It is creation, like you were saying there, manifestation energy, the idea of wanting something and getting it. I also thought about Reiki while you were talking. Like that's the perfect example, right? Because people always say, how does it work? And it's moving energy within the field, and then therefore moving the energy in your body, and you're releasing it back into the field. And so stuff's coming and going into your physical form that is invisible to your eye, right? So that net sort of being the I don't know, it's sentient, I guess is what we need to say. Like there's master consciousness there, right? And part of ourselves being connected to it at all times and in every atom of our being is obviously then aware of it. And that is exactly like Heather's saying, what we're sort of talking about here. So, you know, it already sounds like a lot. I think we're talking about all of existence and stuff like that. So
just to add to like help people make it simple, Semi and Curlian perfected photographing your autoerogetic body in the 1960s. So you can't see it with your physical eye, and it can be photographed because we just have to get on the right frequency to be able to access it. So some people do see, and a lot of children these days are being born remembering, and they see, and they're being born with their gifts. There's so much happening in the cosmos, in the world, in this time right now. And then for those who are spiritually connected, and I'm not saying like religion, but aware and studying like things like quantum mechanics and quantum science and advanced spiritual training, you will begin to see and understand of all of this that's happening and all that's flowing in right now. So if you're like, oh, Reiki doesn't work because they're just moving energy around, well, how do you know? Well, we can actually take a picture of that energy. So really begin to realize you don't know what you don't know.
That is the best thing to ever take into your tool belt and remember all the time. You don't know what you don't know, and your mind can be blown at any turn. So why not, explore, right? That's the journey of life. That's the beauty of it. And before what you were saying about belief, I just wanted to say, like, that's how powerful you really are. I guess I want people to also remember that by virtue of being part of this connected field, you are a powerful creator in existence. So that's where when Heather, business bliss, all the other things, when we're talking about your belief structure and how your beliefs can change your life, it is because you are a very powerful creator that has decided to be embodied in a singular human form at this moment. But really, you are part of that field. And so if you are someone who believes that Reiki doesn't work, or believes that everything we're saying is hogwash, then you are a powerful enough creator that will be your truth, that will be your reality, and that is absolutely your choice. But we're talking to everyone else who doesn't necessarily think that. And so I think going on from what Heather's saying, then the next step there is really to allow yourself to unravel, because I think by doing this work, by starting this journey, knowing that there are things that you can make more fruitful in your life, you're also having to be vulnerable. There's a vulnerability to the connection with spirit, and we need to spend a little time talking about that too, because that's a big important part of it. You have to sort of be able to undo and unwind yourself, unravel yourself, and then look through the pieces and see what's there, and sort of build it back up with the new knowledge that you've gained, with the new understanding that you've gained, right? So that is a big part of it. For me, I think that once you get to a place where you're comfortable with the idea of being connected to that field and observing your thoughts as a human being, when you start to see the different minds, the higher self versus the ego and the unconscious mind, you start to have awareness of those. That to me is key, because it's a place from which then you can dismantle the personality or the avatar or the human that you thought you were, from a not scary place, from a non-judgmental place, from a loving, compassionate place, right? I think if you try to do it while you're still sort of in the ego mind or in the conscious operating day to day, it can be very rattling because you're sort of like questioning your self identity. But when you're sort of able, through meditation, journaling, all of the things, all energy work, to let go. It's the nesty plunge. It really is. That's what I always say, right? Once you take the nesty plunge into a spiritual journey, you have that sort of support, I guess, from the ether, and you can more with more self-awareness, you can then dismantle yourself and be like, okay, I did think some weird things about that, but now I can see where that came from. The way that when I was small, my uncles and my parents would talk at Christmas, and I just sort of picked these things up and I made them true. And why did I ever do that? And do I think they are? You can examine all of those things that we've talked about, limiting beliefs and narratives that we carry through our whole lives. Like, I'm not a reader because my whole family of origin read more than me. So my narrative my whole life was I'm not a reader. That's not true. I've read many books. So you really start to question in a self-exploratory way. It's a loving questioning of sort of your operating style, your belief structure, your filters. That's a word I use a lot too. Like I am a cisgendered man who is a Canadian. Like those are personas those are filters that I've agreed to wear, I guess, as I journey through this life. They can be questioned, they can be changed, and they can be looked at. If really we want to get behind it all, we are this field, right? We are this field, in my opinion, experiencing itself through separation. So we separate into individuals so that I can be different than you, Heather, and we can sort of disagree or agree on this topic. And that way, since we are all ultimately the field, we are getting to know ourselves in this beautiful way, right? So that to me helps the connection. It helps with the judgment, both personally and out to the world. And so, yeah, to me, like I would then say step 3 really is meeting yourself. That you have to spend time sorting through what you've dismantled, what you've seen, questioning your beliefs. That's a big part of it. In a lot of people will call it the dark night of the soul, or there's other phrases for that. But you sort of have to go through a bit of a mucky bit where you're just kind of examining all the pieces that you thought made up who you were, and you end up with a different version of who you are after that.
And I love this. And 2022 was really the year of that for me, as I'm doing regular timeline therapy sessions and literally just unpacking my unconscious mind of all the beliefs that I thought I was, right? So I first just want to say, people, we are not our behavior. Mm-hmm. So our behavior comes from our belief system. Our belief system comes from our conditioning, which means the environment we grew up in. So we are not our behavior. And when we can take the moment to do the unpacking, we can see where the behavior comes from the belief system. Then we can see where the belief system comes from. And then we don't have to identify with it. And we can be able to release it and unpack it and let it go. But you have to be willing to go on the emotional journey to release and let go, and to reframe the meanings you have given things in the past, so that you can put a new belief system in, a new operating system, a new mental filter, so that when a future situation comes your way, you don't behave the same as before.
Right. Which is where we get into language like triggers and how to be self-aware enough or understand your triggers to be able to overcome them, right? I think, and that's what I mean about meeting yourself. Like there has to be honesty there, very basic, intrinsic, true honesty. And that's the other thing we should mention about the net or the field or the ether, is like you can't get anything past it because it is existence. It knows all the answers, right? So you have to be willing to sort of like look at yourself and figure that out, and do it in a kind way. What I think is important to also say here is that like that's a ride. It's a roller coaster. You're going to come up against judgments of yourself and others. There's going to be moments where maybe you realize something about a belief structure you've carried since you were small, and suddenly you're angry about it, and you want to blame, like when you realize where you got that belief structure, you want to suddenly blame someone. And so there's grief that comes along with that too, right? That you grieve parts of yourself that you dropped when you were a kid because maybe you got criticized and it didn't feel safe to be that version of who you were. You let that go. That's still in there. That's a painful wound that needs to be addressed to be able to reintegrate more fully, to be able to access even more self-awareness and a higher state of consciousness. So the sort of roller coaster of figuring that out is where you're going to spend a lot of time at first, and then on the other side of that, it becomes truly the nesty plunge. On the other side of that is where it really becomes the trust. And when you meet the resistance to trust, so let me say it like this, like, let's give the ether or the net an 100% number, and you're going to meet resistance but you're always trying to get to the 100%. So you're going to realize like, oh, I'm only sort of at 70 or 80 or whatever it is. Okay, well, where's the resistance coming in? What is this, my egoic mind? Is this a belief structure that I can't let go of? Is this something that I attach to my identity so strongly that the idea of not being that just catapults me into fear and resistance and ego mind wanting to protect? That's interesting. It's interesting self-knowledge to get to that point. And maybe that's where you stay for any amount of time. You know, you're like, yeah, I really hit that wall, and you know what, I'm really uncomfortable. I need to sort of stay here, and that's my process. We're literally talking about my process. You sort of stay in that uncomfortability and wiggle around in it to figure it out. And eventually, when you figure it out or heal it or say the thing that you never said to the person you thought you burned the bridge with, or you know, whatever you find in there, the uncomfortability, the resistance, you can get to the place where you release that energy. And you know, there's health things that come along with that. A lot of these traumas are trapped in the body. A lot of right, so suddenly the shoulder that's been locked for 15 years starts to feel a little bit better, and all of those things, and you're like, oh, I'm seeing tangible, measurable, fascinating results of this interpersonal work that I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to do it all just to have this beautiful connection that I have heard is possible. And as you do that and meet that resistance and move it away, suddenly you have a new vista ahead of you, and there's so much more to explore, and there's a new sort of like room or hallway of self-discovery, which is it's a lovely part of it. So that's where the trust in the process really comes in. And I just want to say that it is a process that you will feel on some level you are doing with yourself. But I am here to tell you folks that you are doing it with your guides, with your ancestors, with your past life selves, with your higher self, with your guardian angels. You are so many more beings than you think that you are, and they're all invested in you and your health and happiness. So you're going to start, that's where the intuition starts to take over. When you get past that noise, that's what I call it, sort of like the noise of the egoic mind. As you clear that, what's left is that's the room in which you hear spirit. That's the room in which you hear your intuition, because you've gotten past that thing that you realize you put in your own way. And you suddenly are reaching for the phone right when that friend you were thinking of calls, and suddenly you are turning left when you thought you were going to turn right, but the parking spot was right there and you have no idea how that. And so you start to sort of surprise yourself, again, measurable, tangible, tactile things, and you're like, oh my God, that it makes you trust your intuition more. You're trusting that side of you that is unsure but knows it's connected more than your egoic mind. And when you start to flip that script, when the balance goes, the world opens. And so yeah, that is the real nesty plunge of trusting spirit. Yeah.
And that will get you to what we call the flow. And this is why I created one of my first exercises for manifesting. I created for my clients was called Bliss Bunny. And the first day was just to observe your thoughts, to understand you are an observer. So if I stop talking, there's stuff happening in there. Did you observe it? Or did you jump in the pool and dance around with it and start giving awareness to those thoughts? But we don't have to get involved. So the first is just to observe, not get involved. And then the second is to take a tally. How many of those were positive? How many of those were negative? And how many of those were in alignment with the person you want to be and the life you want to create? Because if we understand that we do everything habitual and we are running on our habitual operating system, I can take last year and put it on top of this year and it will be the same. Unless you change the thinking and you do this inner work. And so once you observe, then you can tally, and that will tell you where your results will be on the positive or the negative side of the pole. And then we actually have to observe and reframe. So and then there's a later layer of like unpacking. Where did that come from? Why did it trigger me? What would I prefer to think? What's the belief that came from? I'm going to choose now to believe this. Now, of course, you can do timeline therapy sessions with me, but you can also use something like auto-suggestion, a spaced repetition of an idea or thought over time. So if you used to think money doesn't grow on trees, it's so hard to earn money. Now you can think, well, money is everything, everywhere. Everything is omnipresent. Money flows to me freely, easily, and effortlessly. I'm so lucky. And when we start to shift, if we understand we're connected to that morphogenic field, every single thought has a thought impulse. So 17 to 70 seconds, that thought is an impulse going into the net, which acts like a magnet to attract back to you more of what you desire. That's why Thomas is saying all of a sudden, you said you turned left, but they said the parking spot was on the right, but there it was perfectly on the left. How? Because you said, I want the perfect parking spot. And you were directed the information to find it. And this is happening for us all the time. And life can be so much easier. And why I named it Bliss Bunny is because Louise Hay, who's one of my favorites, said, well, you're not going to always be a bliss bunny. And I thought, why not? I'm going to make an exercise so we can always be a bliss bunny. So you always have something to use to bring you back to bliss. And when Thomas was saying that we can hold the physical ailments in our body actually comes from our mind. Use Louise Hay's books. You can heal your life. You can heal your body. You can do it. And you can look at all the physical ailments and it will tell you what E equals motion. Emotion is energy in motion. And so you had a thought which caused a feeling and which triggered an emotion which caused the physiological response in your body. The study of epigenetics, it is a science proven by Dr. Bruce Lipton. Took him 20 years and it's here now. So we know that your thoughts do become things, but they also elicit physiological responses in your body. And our language that we use to describe things creates that physiological response. So no matter what happens, we have the choice to choose positive or negative. And if you haven't watched the Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown yet, it's absolutely fantastic because she goes through the different words and the language and how those words and language are creating physiological responses in your body. That's why it's ideal if you say I'm stressed versus overwhelmed, because if you were overwhelmed, you'd be lying in bed and you wouldn't be able to move. But because you chose to say the word overwhelmed, you actually put your body into a fight or flight state, which is a stress state because of the word you chose to describe the feeling. So this is the importance of understanding the unconscious mind, understanding language, understanding quantum mechanics, understanding the morphogenic fields we're connected to. You're not just this meat suit walking around waiting to get to the end of life. That's not what you came here to do. There is so much more. You just have to open yourself to it. And I was raised religious, and then we stopped because it wasn't in alignment, and I became atheist, and I went and got a science degree. And then I was studying, my mom's over here going, telling me all this energetic stuff and watch The Secret and look at Bob Proctor. And here's this book on how you cure cancer. And here, The Cure to Obesity, if you haven't read, that's a great book. Talks about how, anyway, so much. So I'm over here going, no, Mom, I'm science. I have a minor in biology. I've got the science degree. Like they're actually not different. No. And when we begin to understand and study deeper, that's how I was able to explain, well, when we split the atom, science, right? It's not your average science you're taught in school, but this is scientifically proven. And maybe some of you are like, ooh, science, scary. You don't want to talk about science. You just want to talk about spirit. Sure. And some of you are like, what spirit? Let me talk about the quantum mechanics.
Absolutely.
Whatever you need, whatever way you need to perceive it, I just want you to know there's something more than you, bigger than ourselves. There's so much we don't know. And if you could just open yourself up to the possibility that there is so much to learn, you can live life peacefully, gracefully, blissfully. And the person who has the mental toughness and willpower to mind their mind, own their thoughts, own their connection to spirit, take the time to do the energetic work, not just the physical do, will be the person who really creates life by design. And we're all co-creating. It's just, are you doing it intentionally and co-creating the life you desire? Are you co-creating from the mental filter of the person you were conditioned to be?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And what I always like to say too is, like, if you think about it in terms of meeting yourself, then aren't you curious? I mean, it might be hard, it might be long, it might be a journey, it might be something you didn't expect, but I'm curious about, I want to know as much of my truest self as I can while still in body. So it, like, to me, that's the joy of life, right? How far can you expand to remember how powerful of a being you are, how powerful of a co-creator you are, how cosmically aware you can be while journeying through life as an individual human being on this planet? Doesn't that change what that human being can do when that human being believes and knows and remembers the truth of the bigness of their soul? So yeah, it's beautiful. Whichever way you want to come about it, it's beautiful work.
It's a whole new meaning to the human experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you are ready to own your connection with spirit, like I am, I'm working with Thomas to help me do so, and, really connect to that mediumship that I so desire to have a connection to, please reach out to Thomas. So Thomas, where can they find you? Where can they learn more about you? How can they work with you?
Absolutely. So I'm on Instagram under the Cedarwood Sanctuary, and you can find me there and message me there. Also, you can check out the website and read a little bit more about me and some of the services that I offer. And that's the same name, www.thecedarwoodsanctuary.ca. I'd love to hear from all of you.
Amazing. And you guys can grab that link from his website down below. And thank you so much for being here. And I just want to say, for those who are live with us now, we have the Quantum Leap Blueprint, my new workshop, which I'm so excited that we are doing on January 23rd. And we will be doing it at the beginning of every quarter for the year, unless anything changes. That is our plan right now. So if you are truly ready, so what we talked a lot about today is on the quantum side, and we're going to do a little bit more on integrating that with the physical work and creating the plan and the blueprint to actually help you do in 90 days what most people won't even do in a year or a lifetime, because they don't have the plan, the roadmap, the accountability, or the belief system to make it happen. And that's what we're going to help you do. So I invite you all to come join us at the Quantum Leap Blueprint, and make sure you check out Thomas and you click that link below. And just remember, you are powerful creators. So own your mind and ask yourself, what is the best that can happen? Expect magic and miracles. Stay happy, healthy, wealthy, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you. Bye.